Ms. Parker.
Will you tell the jury your name, please, ma'am?
Michelle McCarta.
And are you the mom of Talia that we heard testify yesterday?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do you know the defendant in this case, Leilani Simon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you also know Daniel Youngkin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you know their children?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know Quentin Simon?
Yes, ma'am.
Before we get deeper into this, I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 29. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. McCarta, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 29. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and without saying what's in it, is it a photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and does it fairly and accurately depict what is in the photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, we tender what's been marked as State's Exhibit 29 into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, Exhibit 29 is admitted without objection.
Okay. And now that it's in evidence, can you tell us what this is a picture of?
This is a picture of Quentin. When I was off, we took him to Red Lobster to eat.
Okay. So in this photograph, he was out with you.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I publish this to the jury?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I'm just going to do it old school.
Okay.
Ms. McCarta, how did you first become acquainted with the defendant and Daniel?
Through a church lady that went to church with us for many years,
Okay, and who was the church lady? What was her name?
Sandra Howell.
Okay, and was she related to them in some way?
She was the sister of Billy Joe's husband.
Okay, so that would be, she was the sister of the defendant's stepfather?
Yes.
Okay, and did she introduce you to them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what was the purpose of her introducing you to them?
She had been keeping the children, and her knee got real bad. So she asked if me or my daughter, or both, could watch them because she wasn't able to do that anymore.
Okay. How many daughters do you have?
I have 3 daughters.
Okay, and which daughter was going to help babysit?
Maritza McCarta.
Okay, and is that your oldest daughter?
Nope, she's 19. She's my middle.
She's the middle one, and then
Yes.
Talia's the youngest.
Yes.
Okay, so did you go and meet with the defendant and her family to perhaps babysit the children?
No, ma'am. Billy Joe had called me on the phone a couple days later.
Okay, and did she set up the babysitting arrangement?
Yes.
All right. Do you remember approximately when this was?
We started watching Quentin and them around the end of January, February of 2022.
Okay. And that would have been before Sky was born.
Yes.
So at that time when you first started babysitting, there were just the 2 boys.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And about how old would the boys have been then?
Quentin was young, maybe 9 months, 10 months.
Okay. So they would have been, Zane would have been a toddler.
Yes.
And Quentin would have been an infant.
Yes.
When you first started babysitting.
Yes.
them. So how did it work? Who brought the kids to your house?
Most of the time, Danny. Once in a while, Leilani.
All right. And how often would the children stay with you?
At first, it was just when they worked. And then it started being overnight. And a lot of times, we would even call for Quentin to stay with us, even when they were off.
Okay. Now, who was paying you?
Leilani was paying, but it wasn't like steady. She would pay, and then she would text me later and tell me she needed formula for Sky or diapers, and could she come and get it, and she would pay back when she got paid next time.
Okay. And how much were they paying you to babysit? Do you remember?
Yes.
what the agreed upon amount was, whether you were actually getting that or not?
It was like $25 here, $30 there. One time I think she paid $100. It was just different amounts
Okay.
because she would tell me she didn't have it or she had to do this.
So is it fair to say that you and your daughter were being paid a lot less than the normal going rate for childcare?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. You said that Quentin would spend the night sometimes. Would both the boys spend the night or just Quentin?
Zane stayed a handful of times. Quentin stayed a lot.
And why is that? Why would Quentin stay overnight?
Honestly, Quentin loved us. He was close to us. And I just felt like he would be better off at our house because there was a difference in the love she showed between Zane and Quentin. And I felt bad, and I would work, and my daughter would say, "Can we just get him, Mom, because this happened today?" And I would say, "Yeah, call her and ask her if he can stay."
Can you think of some examples of how the defendant treated the boys differently?
Well, she was working at Bojangles, and she had brought food home, and Quentin loved food, and every time he seen a bag, he would want it. He's little. She would feed Zane before she fed Quentin, every time. And I just thought that was strange.
So do you mean she'd give Zane food and make Quentin wait?
Yes, ma'am,
I mean,
absolutely.
She wasn't physically feeding Zane at that
No, she would give him the food.
Just give him food.
And he would eat, and then Quentin would be, whining and wanting it, and she would have given it to him eventually.
Did you ever say anything to her about that?
I did not.
Are there any other ways that she treated the boys differently that you noticed?
Just by the way she talked to him, when she would, once in a while that she did come and pick them up, she would, grab Zane and he would hug her because he was close to her. I mean, you could definitely tell it. And then, Quentin, 99% of the time, wanted to stay with us, and he would start crying. Now, if Danny come and picked him up, it was different.
Okay. How did Quentin act if Danny came?
He would go with Danny. He wouldn't cry to stay with us. He loved Danny. He would, Danny would pick him up and he'd hug him.
Okay. All right. Did Leilani ever talk to you about how she felt about the boys?
Yes, ma'am. She just, one time, and my daughter had more talks with her than I did. I didn't really talk to her that much. But she just said that she loved Quentin more. Zane more than Quentin. And, I didn't question it. She's a crappy mom. I knew that. But I just never said anything to her. I would always call Billy Joe when I seen things that was going on.
Okay. Did she ever, in that conversation, did she explain more about, like, Zane had been through things with her?
Yes,
or anything
that
like
Zane had been her ride or die his whole life. And she did not like Quentin's father.
Okay. So, other than what you saw in your own home, did you ever see things outside? Like, did you ever observe the children at her house or outside their house?
On one incident, my daughter was going to our shed, that's where our laundry room is, and she had come running in and saying, "Mama, Zane and Quentin is in the ditch." Well, it was the road on McCarta, but the ditch is right here. And Quentin was actually in the ditch, and Zane was trying to get him out.
Okay. Did you go out and see the kids outside?
I did.
Okay. And at some point, were they returned home or took back to your home?
They was returned. I asked Talia to take them home and find out where Leilani was. I immediately called Billy Joe.
Okay. And observing these kinds of things, did you ever report it to any authorities?
It had been reported. It had happened several times even before we started keeping them that I didn't know about, and it had been reported.
Okay. Do you know what authority, if any, it had been reported to?
Defects.
Okay. And you say it had been reported, so were you aware of somebody other than you reporting it? Okay. And if you could say yes
Yes,
or no.
yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I won't ask you what they said, since we're in court. I just need you to, say what you did and said. Let's move to the day that Quentin disappeared.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember that morning?
Yes.
All right. Or actually, let's talk about the day before we
Okay.
move to that.
Mm-hmm.
The day before, were you supposed to watch the children that day?
Yes.
And what happened?
They picked up the kids. I did watch them, and Danny come and picked them up, and they were supposed to come back the next day. And around about 5:28, 5:29, I got a text from Danny saying that Leilani was keeping the kids today.
Okay. Now, had that happened before, where she would not go to work and the children would stay at home?
No, because even if she didn't go to work, most of the time she sent them to us because she wanted to sleep.
Okay. And how do you know that?
Because, and she would stay at home because one day I had them and me and my daughters were taking them somewhere. And when we rode by, when we got in the car, she was on her front porch. It's like a little porch. And when she seen us, she actually ducked down and hid from us because she was supposed to be at work. But it didn't matter. We loved them, so I would have kept them anyway.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Quentin was like? Like, what did Quentin like? I know he was very young. He wasn't even 2 years old yet, but were there things that he said or things that he liked that you know about?
Yes. He loved cheese. Every time I would get home from work, he would want mac and cheese, and he would go to the refrigerator and he would get my cheese out, my block of cheese, for me to cut it for him. And if I would have let him, he'd ate the whole thing. He loved Blimpie. He loved Bubbles. Anytime we could go to the store and get him Bubbles, he just loved them. He was a very happy baby when he was with us.
Okay. And you said that he would spend the night. When he would spend the night, where would he sleep?
Usually we would all make a pallet in the floor, and we would let him watch Blimpie until he fell asleep.
Okay. And what is Blimpie?
It's a cartoon.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
For those that don't have little kids that don't know what Blimpie is, so it's a cartoon.
Yes.
Okay. The children, when they came to your home, were they sent with clothes, food, diapers, things that they would have needed?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So how was that handled?
Zane always come dressed. Several times we got Quentin, and he would be in a long onesie, and he would have poop from all over. I don't want to say a baby didn't smell good, but he smelled like rotten milk. He had rings around his neck. We'd immediately bathe him and put him fresh clothes on.
Okay. Did you keep clothes for him at your house?
I did, because I had to tell Billy Joe that she wasn't sending anything for the kids.
Okay. And did Billy Joe give you money to get clothes?
Yes, we went and got clothes. I took pictures of the clothes and the receipt and sent them to her.
Okay. And so then after that, you just kept clothes at your house?
Yes, I kept half of the clothes there.
Okay. All right. Now that we've covered that, now let's go to the day that Quentin disappeared. So that day, what is the first time you became aware something was out of the ordinary? You said, so that morning, Danny had texted you that the kids were going to stay at home.
Yes.
At that point, did you have any more conversation with anybody about that?
No.
Okay. Then what's the next thing you heard from anybody in that family?
Me and my youngest daughter was on the way to McDonald's. Danny calls and asked me, did I get Quentin or have I seen him? And I said, no, why? And he said that Leilani said he was missing. So my kids homeschool. I went to McDonald's. We come back. I dropped my youngest daughter off, and me and my oldest daughter headed down to Leilani's house.
Okay. Do you remember about what time of the morning this was?
Maybe around 9.
Okay. And so you dropped off food at your house. And how close is your house to theirs?
Caddy corner across the street.
Okay. So y'all are neighbors. You're real close by.
Yes.
So you dropped food off and then you went over to their house.
Yes.
Right. And what do you drive?
Armada.
And what color is it?
White.
Okay. And when you got there, did you park in the driveway?
I did.
Okay. I'm asking because we've seen some scene photos with a vehicle.
Yes.
And that Armada that's white is your vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you got there, were there any police there yet?
No, ma'am.
All right. What did you do when you got there?
I asked Leilani if I could go in and help her look because Quentin liked to hide. He would hide from us under the bed. Like, he just liked to play like hide and seek. She told me no. Me and my daughter both no. I asked, was the police called? They said no. Danny said no. And I said, why haven't you called the police? And I told her, I said, call the police. And then she did call the police.
When you got there, was Paul outside?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So Paul, did you later see Paul?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But when you got there, it's just Danny and Leilani.
Yes, ma'am.
And where were they?
Under the little carport, they have a little covered carport. There was, like when you pull in their driveway in the back, it's like a little carport.
Okay.
Before you go in to get to the pool and the little play area.
Okay. So are you talking about where cars are parked or like the porch thing behind the house?
When you pull, where the cars are parked, but they was kind of standing out from underneath the carport.
Okay. Sort of in the driveway.
Yes.
Okay. So they're standing in the driveway. And what were they doing?
She was standing there smoking cigarette one after another. She was like screaming.
Okay. At some point, did the police get called?
Yes.
Okay. Was that immediately after you suggested it or later? What
I would say a couple minutes. I heard her get on the phone and call the police.
Okay. And did the police show up quickly?
Yes.
All right. After the police arrived, what did you do or where did you go?
Paul had come down at that time, and he was letting Zane ride this little car thing. Well, he ended up doing it too fast. Zane fell and slid across the concrete, and I had asked one of the policemen if I could take Zane to my house until all this was kind of, situated, and they told me yes, I could.
Okay. So did you take Zane and go home?
I did.
Okay. And at some point, were you interviewed by law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
When did that happen?
Well, I have cameras, so a gentleman come that worked and he checked my camera system and asked me questions.
Okay.
And then I was also pulled into the police station by a detective.
Okay. So go do like a formal interview?
Yes.
Okay. During the time that you were keeping the kids, did Leilani ever bring them to you to go somewhere other than work?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, she, a couple times she said that she had to run to 204 to go take care of business. And then a couple times we kept them when she was off work, that we knew she was going to be off work, but we didn't know what she was doing.
Okay. When she would say she was going to 204, did you know what that meant?
No.
Okay. And how long would she be gone when she said she was going to 204?
Maybe 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay. All right. Give me just a moment, okay? Thank you, Ms. McCarta. That's all the questions that we have, and defense counsel may have some.
Thank you.
Ms. McCarta, I'm Martin Hilliard. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Is it safe to assume that you, prior to October of 2022, already had strong opinions about Leilani's fitness as a mother?
No, sir.
you did not have strong opinions prior to October?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so,
Sorry.
yeah. So you didn't think she was a good mom, and you were fairly vocal about it, and you
I
didn't,
didn't think,
you didn't hesitate to say something about it when it was on your mind, correct?
yeah, I didn't think she was a good mom. Thought she was a shitty mom.
Okay, well, there you go. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to ask you, you started watching Quentin in January to February of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
And everything you've just told me, I'm going to ask you what you did, okay?
Okay.
Did you ever make any police reports? You.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Did you ever make any reports to DFACS? You.
I talked to them. Yes, I did.
That wasn't the question. I asked you if you reported what you were concerned about.
No, because DFAT's got in contact with me.
That's, again,
No, I did not.
you never reached out, and you weren't concerned enough between January and October to do that on your own, were you?
I was very concerned.
But not concerned enough to reach out and make a report.
I didn't have to. They reached out to me.
Okay. Well, that being said, you didn't reach out and make a report, correct?
No, I did not.
All right. So now let's talk about the day to day. So you started watching Zane and Quentin in January to February of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many days a week?
5 to 6.
5 to 6
depending.
days a week. All right. And who was it, and what time who brought them, and what time would they normally come over to your house in the morning?
Early, around 5:36.
Okay. And who was it that normally brought them?
Danny.
Okay. And in the afternoons, what time would they go home?
4:35.
Okay. And who was it that normally picked them up?
Danny.
Okay. And over the course of this 8 or 10 month period that we're talking about, January or February of 2022 to October of 2022, how many times would Miss Simon be the one that dropped them off or picked them up?
I would say a handful of times.
10? 5?
Maybe 10.
Okay. So out of a possible 10 times a week for...
Oh, not 10 times a week.
No, no.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Just let me finish. So drop off in the morning, pick up in the afternoon, that's 2 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's at least 5 days a week. That's 10 times a week, right? Correct?
Yeah, she didn't come. No, not that much.
I understand. What I'm saying
Okay.
is so there's 10 possible or 12 possible drop-offs or pickups in a week for the kids, right?
Since I was keeping them.
Since you were keeping them.
Yes.
And she would maybe do 1 a week. Or
Maybe.
2 a
Yes.
week. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. So it's also a fair statement that Danny was the one who mostly did the dropping off and the picking up, correct?
Absolutely.
And if I understand your testimony correct, it's not uncommon for even if she was asleep for the kids to come stay with you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Danny would be the one that dropped them off even on those days, correct?
Correct.
So Danny was the one who mostly did the dropping off and the picking up and the one that interacted with you.
Yes.
Okay. That's a fair statement.
Yes.
Okay. You also stated a minute ago that it was odd that you would get a text not dropping the kids off.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that's because even if she was home, she would stay sleeping. Now, who was it that sent you the text on the 5:30 on the morning of October 5th?
Danny.
Okay. And he said the kids were staying home with Leilani, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That was odd, was it not?
Yes, because she never kept them.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. So did that stand out to you as being odd at the time?
No, not. I never thought she would hurt her child. So.
Well, I understand you have your conclusions, but it was odd that Danny texted that to you, though, wasn't it?
No, I don't think it was odd that he texted it to me.
Well, you just stated you can't have it both ways, Miss
Well,
McCarta.
no, I think it was odd that she kept them because she never did. But I don't think it was odd that Danny texted to me
Okay.
because I had more communication with him than I did her.
Correct, because he was the one who mostly watched the children, correct?
Yes, yes.
And he was one who mostly took care of the children,
Yes,
correct?
absolutely.
So that being said, is 90% of the time, he was the one over there care, custody, and control based on what you observed, wasn't it?
Yes,
Okay. Now, you stated that Quentin would be better off at your house. And y'all kept him a lot of times, correct?
Yes.
All right. And physically, was Quentin thriving?
No. How can a kid thrive that doesn't get shown the love and get food and get everything else that another kid would get? I don't think he was thriving.
Okay. Would you be surprised to find out that medically he was?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, whenever you responded that day and you came over to the house, you said it was Danny that called you, but is it possible that you were wrong? It might have been Leilani that called you to come over?
No, Leilani did not call me.
Okay. All right. And whenever you got over there, you said she was screaming and upset, correct?
She was screaming, but she wasn't crying. I feel like that if something was to happen to one of my kids, I would be hysterical, and I would also be out looking for my child.
Miss McCarta, do you understand that different people respond to different stressors in different ways?
I just don't, when something's wrong with one of your children, I think you would respond crying, upset, and looking, and calling 911 first before you call anyone else.
And I'm going to ask you, Miss McCarta, you've already formed opinions about Miss Simon at this point in time, correct?
I have.
Okay. And is it possible that you're projecting those opinions onto what her behavior should be according to you?
Absolutely not.
So you
I
think
do not.
So you think objectively that everybody should act the way you think they should?
No, I don't think everybody should act, but a mother that has children, that you carry them in your stomach by your heart. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't she?
Well, I understand that, but what I'm saying is you seem to be actually saying, yes, you agree with me. I'm saying you're projecting your opinions and your ideas and your beliefs onto other people.
No.
Is it possible that's what you're doing?
No, it's not possible when I'm not doing that.
Okay. And who was it that paid you every week, you said?
Sometimes Leilani, sometimes Danny. It would come from their different cash apps.
All right. So, but you, again, there are Cash App records, and so, and they were paid, but not necessarily always regularly, but they paid you.
They did.
Okay. And you also mentioned this thing about giving food. Now, were there separate containers for Zane and separate containers for Quentin, or was it one container of food?
It was, she would bring a bag of food home, and it would have, they would both want it, but she would always give Zane first. She would always give it to him first, and she would tell Quentin, stop, wait.
All right, and Zane was the older of the two, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, correct? And how old was Zane at this point in time?
3,
Okay, and how old would Quentin be at this point in time?
10 months maybe.
So, and again, you may have, you may not, but you thought that that was some sort of indicia of preference.
Well, yes, because when you have more than one kid, you would take it inside, you would half it, in plates, and give it to both of them, not just serve one while the other one's crying for the food. You would feed both of them.
Well, Ms. McCarta, I understand that's what you believe, but you understand other people may believe differently and disagree with you.
And that's okay, they can disagree with me, but if you have kids, you have to do it, you should do it a certain way. I mean, you should feed both of them. You'd want both of your kids to eat, not just one while the other one's crying.
Okay, well, but Quentin did get to eat, though, did he not?
Yes, a few minutes later.
All right, but you understand there's a difference between withholding food from a child and feeding the child in a different order than you would do, right?
Yes.
That's all the questions I got, Josh.
Ms. Parker? Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. McCarta, you're excused, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, she may. So, Ms. McCarta, you are excused. You can remain or you can leave.
Thank you.